This week on A to Z Running, headstrong and self-reliant runners the world over will recoil at the revelation of our fourth rule for realizing your dreams: get help. The question today is, what do we mean by help, and how does that actually make a difference for runners? This is A to Z Running. Welcome back to A to Z Running, where we're helping runners thrive. I'm Zach, and just a reminder that you can learn more about our services at AtoZrunning.com. Be sure to follow us on YouTube and Spotify, where we're sharing the majority of our content. You might be able to find some things on Instagram as well when we're posting there. Did you have a chance to catch the U.S. National Championships this past weekend? It was electric. It was outstanding. It was upsets. It was records. It was all the exciting things about championship racing in oodles and bundles and boundless enthusiasm. We loved it. It was a lot of fun to watch, and it was a lot of fun to scope the results after the fact as well. Very exciting times. And so if you missed that, we'll share here coming soon, coming up shortly. We'll share our take, at least, on the experience. It's just Zach today. Unfortunately, Andy is otherwise occupied as we're just about to head to the mountains and be completely off the grid for a stretch. And so you might not hear from us again for a week or two, but we'll be back soon. And have no fear. We'll be back soon with more rules for realizing your dreams. But before we get to our topic today, a quick reflection on running mechanics. I was running a 5K recently and was chatting with one of the other competitors after participants. How would you say that? Is it competitors or participants? Or both? I guess it's both. One of the other participants, we were chatting after the race and talking about mechanics and the classic question, what does someone need to do to run like that? Whatever that is. That running looks great. What do I need to do that? And we have answers for you. And they're actually simple answers. And really it's not a terribly complicated dynamic to improve our running mechanics, to expand our running efficiency and economics and some of those things. It's not terribly complicated, but it does take time. And if we were talking about this in one of our recent episodes about rules for realizing your dreams, there's a reason why patience and consistency come up first, because that's basically the rule for everything in running, and it's true here too. But you have to do the right kind of stuff. You can't just be patient and consistent and not doing anything about it. And so when it comes to running mechanics, it's always the combination of establishing natural and autonomic patterns, movement patterns, that your body does without you having to think about it deliberately. And in order to establish those patterns, you have to practice proper movements, proper motion, and you have to reinforce it regularly and frequently, especially at the outset, and then consistently ongoing. Because if you don't reinforce it over time, there's drift. There's always a bit of drift that happens. And then you have to give attention to the kinds of things that help make it more likely, especially as your body fatigues. So we're talking about like coordination, we're talking about stability, and we're talking about general strength and mobility types of considerations. And so if I'm attending to those things regularly, and if I am giving a concerted effort to proper movement mechanics in a deliberate, strategic kind of way. We have our pre-run routine. It's currently still available for free. If you go to atozrunning.com/free, you can get delivery of the pre-run routine free that way, or just reach out to us and say, hey, how can I get the pre-run routine? We'll send it to you. We're not trying to keep secrets here, but the key to doing that correctly in terms of the benefits is not just doing it, but giving attention to the movements themselves and the deliberateness of the movements. I'm trying to teach my body to move in the right way. So I can't do those routines just kind of floppy and lazy. I have to think very hard about what is the right movement here and how can I do it as well as possible, as tightly as possible in terms of correctness, and then do that over and over. And you don't do it too many times, 10 to 20 times before each run. The whole pre-run routine, you do it once before each run, but each movement is 10 to 20 times. And then if you do that every day, or at least every time you go for a run, you're going to see those improvements over time. And that's kind of it. Again, it's not complicated, but it does take time. All right. Well, that's enough on that. Let's talk about help. We've been talking about the rules for realizing your dreams as a runner, and we've shared the first three, which is these common threes, as it were, and there are 3 things to be, 3 things to get, and 3 things to stop. We've shared the 3 things to be, and if you missed those episodes, definitely go back and listen. 2 of them were in one episode because they tend to just go together, but we talked about being patient, number 1, and there's number 1 for a reason. We talked about being consistent. We talked about being balanced. And if there's a quick summary on that, patience is all about contentment in the moment, while actively working toward a better future. And this hinges on imagining a better future and what it looks like to get there, as well as reflecting on the current moment and what brought it about. That's patience in a nutshell. Consistency, then, is making the good things a regular habit. And consistency hinges on patience because it takes time. Creating good habits takes time. And then the implementation of something good over time, which is consistency, that's what then produces the desired end. It also takes wisdom because we got to be making right choices. Consistency in bad choices or poor choices is not great. And then balance. Balance we were talking about as recognizing our limitations in life, recognizing the energy that's available to us. Making decisions takes energy, and we only have so much energy in general as well, and so we have to channel that energy wisely. And effective and efficient use of our energy is wise. And so what does it mean to be balanced in the way we're approaching something, and balanced against life, balanced within itself? There's some layers to that. We shared all those things and more. Go back and listen to those episodes if you want to dive in deeper. But today we want to talk about the first of the next 3. These are the 3 things to get. And the first one is to get help. So what is help? What do we mean by help? This is a multi-layered consideration and worth a little bit of time to dwell on it. Because when it comes down to it, there's a lot of kinds of help I can get. And I need different kinds of help at different times. But all of them are good for me to have all of the time. And so what does that look like? We've essentially tried to distill all the different kinds of help a person can get into 3 categories or 3 variations, and then try to understand what this looks like as a runner when I'm trying to acquire this kind of help. The first layer is the encouragement, inspiration / support. This is like make me feel good kind of stuff. The second layer is guidance and or wisdom, meaning what do I need to know or how can I learn what I need to learn type of thing. And then the last layer is the accountability, feedback, or correction type of help, which is the most difficult help to receive and it can make a really big difference in various senses. Okay, so then within that, I also have 2 forms that help takes. Or all of these types of help take on 2 possible forms, and those are passive and active. This matters immensely when we start to talk about why this is so important for us as people and for us as runners. The passive and active side of things is going to be an imperative here. So passive help is like the presence of helpful things around us that are not specifically directed at or toward or to us. Like helpful stuff, but it's not helpful for me specifically on purpose, if that makes any sense. Most passive is things like sharing of ideas and content. So it's like reading books or internet or podcasts. Hey, podcast. We are passively helping you right now. This is exactly what we're talking about. The least passive thing, or more close to active, but still passive, is social proximity. And so I can be around or in the vicinity of socially interacting with things that are helpful to me that are not necessarily deliberately helpful to me personally. And that's also a spectrum, the social proximity side of things. You know, it's like someone I know knows someone. And so it's like layers of distance, but it's still some kind of social proximity, all the way to I am around people right now directly, and they are in some way helpful to me. And then we have active help. So the other side of it is active. Passive is not deliberately or individually or helpful to me, but still can be helpful because of the nature of the thing. Active is on purpose. It is when help is directed at, toward, or to me. And so this is things like, I want to encourage you by, it's not people saying encouraging things around me. It's people saying to me something encouraging for me. Or I want you to know about something, and they're literally telling me directly about a thing that could be helpful. Someone might be reaching out to me, and that's active, and I might be reaching out to someone else, which is also active. So please tell me about this thing, or help me with this thing, or those types of considerations. So passive and active help in each of the types of help, or each of the ways that people might help us, can be active or passive, all of them. And so what I want to do here is I want to talk a little bit about how that forms and what form and fashion that takes in each of those areas. I guess before I do, one quick side note. Which is better, passive help or active help? It's a trick question, right? Not at all. It's obvious. Active help is significantly more effective at producing benefit for me. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But it also is significantly more taxing, generally, on both parties. And so it really can only be truly effective in limited quantities or in limited situations. It's not something that's possible 24/7 all the time for my own sake and for others' sake. Passive help, far less taxing and yet less effective, but more scalable, generally speaking. Okay, so if that's true, let's talk about what that looks like. Encouragement category, inspiration, support, all those kinds of things. This is the pathos type of help. So this is the emotional appeal side of things. This kind of stuff makes me feel better. That's why it's helpful to me. It directs me toward things like serenity or a sense of well-being. And it's the kind of stuff that is uplifting in a like spiritual and existential sense. Like it lifts my spirit. That's the kind of stuff that we're talking about here. And so passive encouragement, passive inspiration, passive support. Remember the old study, we used to share quite a bit more often about it because it was just so interesting. Why do people participate in races? And they gave 4 reasons in multiple choice answer. Now, of course, you're going to get one of those more likely more than others because you gave them only 4 options. But number 1 reason by far was the social aspect. Not like I'm running with a friend, but like just being there around other runners was the number 1 reason why people wanted to participate in races. Well, this is absolutely a key piece in the puzzle here because that is the essence of passive help is I'm around other people and we're oriented towards something together and it's helpful to be around them for that end, to that end. So the power of positive peer pressure. We talk a lot about that in the world today. Negative peer pressure is not good, but positive peer pressure is very good and we want more of it. That means that we want to be kind of stuck with people who are doing good and find ourselves inclined to do good as a result of that stuckness. That's a good place to be. I feel better about the thing I'm doing when I'm doing it with others. And especially I feel better about the thing I'm doing when other people feel good about the thing we're doing together. And so that's where that kind of encouragement and inspiration dynamic, just being near it, inspires and encourages me, even if no one's saying anything to me at all. Just being around encouraging people makes me feel more encouraged. Being around inspirational stories or successes that others are experiencing around me inspire my own success. It's really an incredible thing. There's that study about teammates with high group identity or affinity. And so an example of this would be like a college cross-country team, right? Or maybe track. Let's go with track because this happens more easily. So a college track team. And I identify highly with this group, this community, and someone in our group or community succeeds, like wins the race, and I'm running the next race. I am more likely to perform better now because my teammate did well. They actually measured an increase in testosterone levels in not the one who won the race, but the teammate who watched the person win the race. That's incredible, right? Like a literal physiological measurement that suggests an increase in performance potential simply because of that positive group affiliation. And so that's what we're talking about. We're talking about that's a passive inspiration. And it happens to be a literal physiological effect, but it's also still a passive inspiration. The core of inspiration comes from the sense of I see myself or potential self in that great achievement of someone else. And when that happens, I'm inspired by that thing. And so there's many, many different forms and fashions, but the greatest inspirations tend to be things that are a little bit closer to home for me, like people doing the thing that I love and people with whom I have some kind of shared identity. So this is where we get like national pride, the Olympics, right? We want to see our country succeed, and we like feel a good thing about that. People who have a sports team, and it's like, that's my team. And when my team wins, like I feel inspired by it. Actually, a lot of times they describe it as people feel like they have shared in the success, which is really funny. But also maybe interesting, like, a full stadium tends to produce better results than an empty one, and that could be part of it. So lots to say, obviously, but this passive sense of being around people and creating a kind of community sense within the thing, the people and the nature of the people can make me feel more encouraged, inspired, supported, even if it's not ever personally directed toward me. Now it gets even better when it's active. And so this is what it looks like for it to the next step. Few things better that we can do for one another than offer encouragement. And I fully and truly believe that. Few things better that we can do for one another than offer encouragement. There's a lot of studies. We were looking through a number of things trying to kind of pinpoint some of this that corroborate this long-held sense, this general sense that life is better when we give support, when we help other people. Like my act of helping someone makes my life better. It's a crazy thing, right? But it's very, very true. And what tends to be the case is that a person who is eager to help others tends to receive help more easily. Like people are eager to help back type of thing. That's why the golden rule principally is just echoed so often. It's like, do to others what you would have them do to you. Because if you do that to them, they're more likely to also do it to you. That's selfish, you could say, but it also is true. And so if we only give, of course, and we're not receiving at all, only giving, that can be exhausting, and that's not good. But what almost always ends up being the case in a community where some are willing to give, others are more willing to give as well. And so who's going to start the giving, right? Who's going to give first and most, and they're going to inspire others. So that needs to be personal for it to really truly, when I am helping others in a direct sense, we're doing something really good for each other. There's like a passive sense of help, like donating money to something good, right? That can be valuable. Certainly always is valuable, but that can be valuable for me in some sense. But when it's personal, it's even more poignant. The moral of the story: the selfish perspective is that we want this because it actually makes us better at the things we are trying to do. But in reality, we want to provide this for others as much as get it for ourselves, because that is the path to creating a better world. In fact, is to be people who give and encourage. Now, what it amounts to in terms of running is there's a lot of different layers that we could tie together here. So we're going to come back to that. But let's talk about the second type, which is guidance or wisdom. Now, this area I would associate more with the logos, the logic. This is the role of like logic and knowledge, understanding. The implication is that I glean right thinking from thorough and rational sources. So things that make sense and convince me of that sense, I tend to learn from those things well. So there's more to it than that, of course. But if that's the kind of angle we're taking here, what does that look like in terms of passive guidance and wisdom? Remember the self-help books? If you listen to the patience episode, we talked a little bit at the outset about the craze, the self-help industry, and the multi-billion, tens of billions of dollars in that industry, and 15,000 or so new publications a year, and like just incredible numbers here. But that passive guidance or wisdom is really good. Like, we like it, and we want it, and we need it. And so it's not a bad thing, but also it is a saturated thing. There's a lot out there. But this is where we build our knowledge and understanding in a general sense. I grow my sense of a thing broadly by exposing myself to more knowledge and wisdom that's out there. And I can reflect keenly and deeply on a personal level, certainly, but it is still impersonal ultimately. It's just knowledge floating out there, and I can kind of grab some of it and ingest it. But what does that look like for it to be personal, and how much better can that be? An active help in terms of guidance and wisdom is the richest, because it is personal. Because it is personal, it is richer. And so that's where someone is directing guidance and wisdom toward me out of an understanding, a personal knowledge of me and who I am. And so here is this guidance and wisdom for you in your current state and existence. That is really good. So you have an understanding then both of the subject, the content, and of the object, me, to whom the content is being given. And that helps me chart a path between my previous limitations and my new capacities. That helps me bridge that gap far better between my state of ignorance and my state of new knowledge. And that's really good. That is really good at helping facilitate that support, that help in that way. So now what about then the third area? So if we're talking then in this realm of ethos, pathos, logos, then we're missing the ethos still. And the ethos is like the rightness side of things. And so logos is logic, pathos is emotion, ethos is like the moral correctness, you could say, or the ethical. That's where ethics comes from. So ethos and ethics. And so it's like credibility, it's character, it's integrity, it's some of those kinds of dynamics. Now, there's a reason I associate that with the accountability or feedback or correction side of things, because these things are truly what they are when they are truly only possible when they are credible and trustworthy sources. For me personally, I have to feel a sense of credibility and trustworthiness in the source of the accountability, feedback, correction, etc. So feedback, for instance, is always better received within a trusting relationship. There's a lot of people out in the world that could give me feedback. Social media is king of this, right? Unsolicited feedback. Do not throw your pearls before swine. And social media is essentially the epicenter of swine and pearls throwing. Pearls being thrown about. I'm not calling everyone on social media swine, but, you know. And so that doesn't really help most people. Actually, it helps nobody. Fundamentally, it helps almost no one to offer feedback that's unsolicited and to offer feedback that is not personal and coming from a place of care and trust. If there is not an established care and trust, that feedback makes no difference generally and probably causes harm as opposed to help. So don't offer your feedback to people who you don't have a trusting and caring relationship with already, unless it is asked for, in which case there could be certainly instances where that can be valuable. I'm speaking in hyperbole a bit here. But credibility, as Dave Stewart is prone to say, the educator aficionado, the engagement aficionado as an educator, he's a high school teacher, he says it's about care, competence, and passion. Those are his three areas of credibility: care, competence, and passion. And that is exactly what we're talking about when we talk about this relationship here. So what does it look like? Passive and active. Passive accountability, feedback, correction, is what I'm talking about. That's not terribly effective, but it can be helpful still. This is introspective type of stuff. I observe the actions of others and I map them onto my own activities and identity, and that can generate a need for something else. Like I should make a change here, and I'm inspired by something I see beyond myself to make a change within myself, and that can be a kind of accountability for me. Certainly, it is feedback. I can observe or I can have general observations like people need to blank, and I then see myself in that general observation and think I'm one of those people and I should do that. That can happen. There's an interesting form of interestingly enough, with passive accountability, studies show that simply publicly stating an intention makes me 65% more likely to follow through with that intention. And I have not been able to pin down the exact source of these studies for this one in particular. It's constantly referenced in tons of different work out there on the topic of coaching, like business coaching, life coaching, all that stuff. I don't know exactly where it comes from, but I do know that it is rich. And so if that's true, then how do I get that even higher? That's really good. All I have to do is just state my intention, and I'm more likely to follow through. Wonderful. I don't even have to state it directly to someone. I can just post it online, and I'm still more likely to follow through. I can announce it on a street corner. That's always, movies do that all the time, right? But when we get to active accountability or feedback or correction, now we're talking about the real stuff, the hard but good stuff. So 65% more likely to follow through by stating publicly, 95% more likely to follow through if I enter into an active accountability structure with other people or other person. That's really important because now we're talking about nearly double the chance that I'm going to do the thing that I said I was going to do. And that I want that. I want that chance. I want near 100% likelihood of follow through. When I willingly subject myself to the scrutiny of a trusted person. That's the key to accountability. That's the key to feedback. I am willingly saying, you may scrutinize me, and I'm open to what you have to say. That is hard, and it cannot be coerced. This is the part that is so important. To really do this well, it cannot be coercive. If I'm not inviting it, it is not effective. Predominantly. Now, that doesn't mean the principle of the intervention, like caring people come around me and say, you've got a problem and we want to help you with it. That's not to say that actually can't produce good results. It can, but it's not likely to. It's actually unlikely to produce good results. But that doesn't mean it shouldn't happen, also in some circumstances. And so you think about a coach and a team where sometimes you have to go to the athlete and say, you need to stop doing what you're doing and you need to start doing something different. And that needs to happen. That often is not received well. You see it a lot in professional sports or NCAA especially, where the coach is in the athlete's face, and so there's a bad way to go about that. That is terribly ineffective, but it's the most common thing you see on the TV at least. And there's a better way to go about that, which is probably happening behind the scenes a lot more than we notice. So if that's the willing thing, it's like I have to see myself for what I am. That's the first step. I should say there's 3 steps here. I have to see myself for what I am currently, see the correction or the feedback for what it is in terms of its inherent value and truth, and then desire the change that the correction or feedback is suggesting. So I need all 3 of those things. I have to see myself clearly and accurately. I have to understand and trust the feedback for what it is. And then I have to say, and I want to actually make that change. And that's when I'm going to see value in accountability, in feedback, things of that nature. A very wise man often says, the best day of our lives is the day we see ourselves for what we are. Shout out to Louis Konopka. That is the truth. See ourselves for what we are. And then from there, now I know I need something. I need help because I'm not what I think I should be, and I'm not where I want to be. I need help. This is why it's one of our rules for realizing your dreams. Accountability is highly ineffective without regularity and structure. And so the be consistent thing comes into play here. Instantial accountability and occasional unstructured accountability tends to not really be much by way of accountability. And so then it really has a lot to do with if I'm willing, I have to then be committed as well, which is another step. I remember how I said this is really difficult. This area of help is the hardest because there's so many challenges to this. Vulnerability and commitment and all these things, right? How about a St. Thomas Aquinas reference? Because it also is the most effective when it relies on the other person who is willing my good for my sake. So this is why a trusted and caring relationship matters here, because the other person needs to be giving me the feedback or the correction, offering the correction out of a desire for my good, for my sake, not a selfish desire, not a global general desire, but for me. Because then it truly, if I know that in you desire my good for my sake, then the things you have to say, I can count on them. I can trust them. St. Thomas Aquinas said that as a definition of love. I love it. It's the greatest definition of love in terms of simplifying the concept, probably overly so, but on purpose. And so what he said is love is willing the good of the other. Like how good does it get, right? Like I desire your good for you. and that is love. That is really valuable stuff. Grant Wiggins, I'm throwing around a lot of names. I hope that's not too much over the top here. But Grant Wiggins, who wrote extensively on certain topics within the field of education, among other topics. The late Grant Wiggins often talked about feedback as, in order to be effective, it's ongoing, it's timely, it's targeted, it's useful. So like I understand what you're actually saying to me when you give me feedback and what that means in terms of action, all those things. And there's other things too. It's actionable. Feedback is not helpful if I can't do anything about it. Like, for instance, feedback on something I did previously that I'm never going to do again. Great, thank you. But if it doesn't influence any potential future action, it's not really super helpful. So this is how I should speak to others. How then should it be spoken is a question too, because there's many layers, and you can see a lot of different interesting works on like how do we talk to each other, how do we offer feedback, and how do we be vulnerable and speak honestly, and all that kind of stuff. Kim Scott, who wrote a book that in 2019 that has taken some great interest in the business sphere, among other places. Her book is called Radical Candor, and she talks about how what we all should be when we're sharing with each other, when we're discussing things with each other, is a combination of care personally and challenge directly. And that, by definition, her definition is radical candor. When we care personally and challenge directly. I care about you, and so I'm saying this thing. And when we can do that in an open environment relationship, like that's the understanding, it's good. It's rich. So I just spit a bunch of things out to try to get to the point that says accountability needs to be a willing venture. Accountability needs to be, and the things related to feedback and correction, these things are the most valuable help that I can get, but I have to desire it and seek it. And I need to find one who is sharing this with me out of a care for me, for my own good, because then it's just going to be that much better. So why is this all difficult? Why are these things so hard? Time and convenience. Help takes time, and it is often inconvenient for me to seek help. We have a natural aversion, I think, a kind of survival instinct to resist personal criticism. We have an aversion to personal criticism. Like there's a sense that if someone is going to criticize me, that someone is not safe, which is potentially true and also can be very much not true. Negativity often feels less awkward than positivity, and so it's easier to kind of just like be in a kind of negative environment. Join me in my complaining and my unkindness toward others, or these types of things, right? It's much less awkward than positivity. Positivity is like kind of weird. It's like, these people are saying nice things to me, and I don't know what to do with that. Vulnerability and trust are also super hard and take a great deal of energy. And so what it comes down to is getting help in any of its forms and fashions in an active sense. Going from the passive to the active state of any kind of help is a major obstacle for most of us. But that's when the good things really start to happen. So how do I do this as a runner? Let me wrap it up by saying, seek community that is positive and encouraging. Take the time to find people and spend time around them who are positive and encouraging, and especially people who are oriented toward the same kinds of things that I'm oriented toward, because there's a convenience that comes with that then. And so I love my group of runners because we're all running anyway, and so why not run together on occasion? And we're very positive and supportive people, encouraging all the time, and that's going to be great. But also surround myself with people who not only are pursuing like interests, but also who are open to feedback, correction, accountability. And so in an environment where we are open to those things communally, then we are much more likely to lift each other up. It's helpful to think about it as like offer more encouragement than I receive, like be the one to offer the encouragement, and chances are others are going to offer it back even more. And then the seeking guidance and wisdom and accountability type of stuff. I need to be a student of the sport. I need to, in order to get the kind of general passive help, I need to be willing to find good material and writings and such, but more importantly, trusting relationships with credible people. This is where things like coaching tends to come in, but also this is where things like those runners who have been doing it for a long time or have had the kinds of successes that I hope to have. It'd be great to get to know some people like that and spend time with them, because oftentimes they're sharing wisdom with me that I wouldn't have encountered otherwise because it's not in a book somewhere. Solicit accountability and feedback in the same kind of sense. I need to create structures for the kind of accountability that will benefit me here with the kind of people who are going to provide the support for my own sake. And so this is like running groups, running friends. This is pursuing challenges together. Like I have this big dream and goal. I'm more likely to achieve that big dream and goal if I pursue it with someone else. I want to run all winter, even though I might have to run on a treadmill. I'm a lot more likely to do that if I meet somebody at a place and we run together. Let's say I can't do that. At a minimum, if someone else is committed to the same goal as me and we check in with each other on a regular, predictable interval. It's not enough to say we're going to check in with each other and then just kind of leave it at that. Every Monday, let's text each other every Monday and say, how'd that weekend long run go? Or let's text each other every Friday and say, how's the weekend ending up? Or how's the week ending up? That kind of dynamic, right? That kind of dynamic. But I need to seek it. I can't tell someone else, do this for me, and then have it be an imposition. I need to seek it actively, and then it can be of greater value to me. And I've mentioned this earlier, but state your goals and intentions publicly and seek and share feedback on them. This is what I am desiring to achieve, and it's a kind of vulnerability to state our goals to other people, but we're far more likely to be committed to them when we do. And having a running coach is not a bad way to add a layer of all of these things potentially, or any of them as they are needed. But it's also not a panacea. There's a lot of different considerations that go into those things I just shared, and they're not all from the same source. And that's, I think, of great value. So here you go. Help is on the way. Anything is better than nothing. And the key, the hinge point is be known, not hidden. Do not hide. Be known. And that's on me, not on other people. It's not their job to make me open up. It's my job to be open, to be vulnerable, to be known. There we go. That is rule number 4. To realizing your dreams, get help. We got a lot to talk about in the world of running today, but we want to start with the crew, the A to Z runners, and the many things they've been up to lately. At the Metro Way 5K, Drew teamed up with Andy and pushed Drew's sister with the My Team Triumph. It was an incredible run, and there's more of that coming in the future. That's very exciting. At the Osavo River Festival 10K, Justin finished 3rd overall. Congrats, Justin. At the Coast Guard Festival, Joe and Kyle both ran the double, 5K and 10K. Joe was 3rd in his age group in the 5K, 2nd in his age group for the combined challenge, and Kyle was 3rd in his age group for the combined challenge. At the Arcadia Days 5K, Bill was 2nd in his age group. Ethan ran the Byron Days 5K. At the Run the River 5K, Elijah was 3rd overall, shout out, and Bill was 1st in his age group. And as we speak, depending on when you're listening to this, as I'm speaking, Erin is running the Trans Rockies Multi-Stage Ultra, where she's basically running a marathon every day for a week. After 2 stages, she has, with her teammate, finished 2nd on both occasions. So keep it up, Erin, and hope your body holds together. All right, here we go. U.S. National Championships 2025. Incredibly exciting times. It's about a month later than normal because the World Championships is about a month later than normal. And as such, we've just experienced one of the best track meets of the year, and it was everything you hope it to be. 4 days this year. It's a little more condensed than they've done in the past. Harder to double, but didn't seem to faze the big dogs. More on that soon. And some major upsets. Some go home devastated. Stars are in total shock. Children are beating seasoned professionals. What is going on? Let's start it with the women's 10,000. So this was a real predictable race. It was very chill because most of these women are doubling back on the 5,000 only like 2 days or 3 days later. And so they don't want to run as harder than they have to. And even when road stud Taylor Rowe picked things up in the late race, it wasn't really a big move. It's just kind of a little extra pressure. But the asking came all in the final lap and the big kicks. And who's got it? Your legs are a little bit tired. Who's got a big kick on tired legs? And the answer was surprising. First time U.S. champion, despite being a world bronze medalist from 10 years ago. Emily Infeld dropped a 65 in the last 400 meters for the win over reigning stud Elise Cranny, who just about wins like everything, or at least finishes top 3. And she just didn't have it in the last 100 meters, and Infeld took it. Infeld, who is certainly a veteran in the sport, some would say, and at roughly 35 years of age, won her first U.S. title. That's incredible. Surprise upset, by the way, in third place when Taylor Rowe outkicked U.S. half marathon record holder Wayne Kaladi-Fresgi for third place. I think I mentioned that. This is Rowe's first global track championships, and that's going to be exciting. How about the men's 10,000? Same old, except for the final 200 meters. You would have thought Grant Fisher would walk away with this one. It was a nasty, slow race until a mile to go when Fisher just dropped the hammer. But things are not the same as they once were, and it wasn't enough to shake the likes of 1240-something 5K guys Nico Young and Graham Blanks. It took a 3:56 final mile to win this race. That's right, 3:56 over the last mile. But who was it? We witnessed Nico Young's savage kick earlier this season, and it got us asking. Well, Young answered all those questions by beating Grant Fisher in the final kick over Graham Blanks as well. Hands down the best 1-2-3 USA has ever sent to the World Championships in the 10,000. Young, Fisher, Blanks. Just like that. These guys are incredible, and all three of them are worth watching. How about the women's 1,500 meters? Next up in terms of finals. Once again, nothing surprising here. It's just like no one wanted to lead it, which just always happens in the mile, it seems. And so, as a result, everyone just handed the ideal race scenario to Nikki Hiltz. It's like if Hiltz could decide what race would be the best race to run, this would be it. And the runners in this race just keep giving Hiltz this race. So 3 years in a row now, Nikki Hiltz has outkicked the field because Hiltz has an incredible final kick. And so you get great 200 meters, snatching the victory over USA's recent mile record holder, Sinclair Johnson, who still runs a great race and has an outstanding kick, but just not quite enough. And then it was Emily Mackay, who boasts a bronze medal from the World Indoor Championships in 2024 in third place. So that's a strong U.S. team. There's not a lot of confidence in medal potential simply because the upper tier in the women's mile currently, the likes of Faith Kipyegon, Jessica Hull from Australia, Daribe Wilteji, or Gudaf Sige, like a couple of Ethiopians, they're just head and shoulders above everyone else. And so if they're running great, chances are nobody else is winning medals. But in the men's 1,500, it's a little bit different scenario here. And how many upsets can you fit into one race? The answer is at least 2. So you have Olympic medalists who go home devastated. You have an Olympic gold medalist who barely even makes the team. Yared Nuguse, Olympic bronze medalist, made it the race he wanted it to be by just going out hard and running a fast race. But, as you might guess, the problem is that everyone in the United States right now is insanely fast. And so that was not enough to break the race apart. And for case in point, there are 5 Americans currently in the world top 15. 5. Like 1/3 of the top 15 milers in the world right now are all Americans. And so Nuguse might have made the wrong choice here. And so that means he did not win the race. But who did? Well, it wasn't the Olympic gold medalist. It was someone who's actually never made Team USA in the mile before. Jonah Koech. Jonah Koech, who had to run a personal best time to win this race, Still did. The last time we saw him in a global championship, he was running the 800 meters. Now he boasts the U.S. number 7 all-time performance in the 1500 and a U.S. title. That is outstanding. And in second place, still not the Olympic medalists. It was Ethan Strand, newly minted professional runner after an outstanding record-setting NCAA career. Ethan Strand, who has a savage kick and showed off every inch of it by kicking like a demon for second place and the number 8 U.S. all-time performance. Both Koech and Strand ran 3:30 for the 1500 in the U.S. championships, which is just insane. So Strand actually had the fastest final 300 meters when you look at the splits, but he was just too far back. He had too much work to do. He was definitely en route to winning that race if he could have started the kick from further up. And I think that's a rookie move. I think that just is a classic, like the college kid who could outkick everyone when he was in college now realizes, which by the way, the same thing happened to him in the NCAA championships when Nathan Green won it because Strand was too far back. So you would think he'd learn that lesson. He hasn't yet, but he probably will soon. Because you just can't do that anymore. And so Strand, who would have won this race if he was kicking from closer to the front, still finished second to make his first world championship team. Goalhacker, Olympic champion, then had to settle for third. Still a great run, but he was just outmatched today, at least this time. We'll see how that fares in a month at the World Championships. How about Yard Naguse, Olympic bronze medal? He was in 5th place. How about Hobbs Kessler, Olympic 5th place? He was in 4th place. So big names going home. But some really exciting moments for the next team. No one would have guessed that top 3, by the way. No one would have guessed that coming into this race. At least Naguse or Kessler would have been in the top 3 in just about everyone's estimation. And Hocker was never in 3rd place in anyone's mind. But here we go. How about the men's steeplechase? Continue to move on. Well, it was crazy. Of the 6 guys with World Championship standards, only 1 made the team. There's 6 guys coming into this race who have run the world standard. Only one of them makes a team, and it's Kenneth Rooks, who is definitely the favorite for the race. He took the W, and that was not surprising to anyone. But he had to work for it. But it was Daniel Mikulski in 2nd. That was an upset. And Bernard Keeter, who is no surprise, familiar name in U.S. steeple, but he's not everyone's first guess, given the rest of the field and what others have been running. And yet he finished in 3rd for a great execution. All 3 of them now headed to the World Champs, leaving the likes of Olympians Matthew Wilkinson and James Corrigan home for the holidays. Bummer. On the women's steeple side, it is like just a total upset of the whole field. A total round of new faces. Now, an upset in the sense of like historically. But this year, these women have all been running great. And so we've got new faces now. All 3 of them, in fact, new faces to Team USA in the steeple. And that's going to be, well, in the senior side of that at least. It's going to be exciting. It was NCAA BYU standout Lexi Halliday Lowry who took the race. She was, recall, 2nd in the NCAA championships behind the record-setting performance by Pamela Koske. And Halliday Lowry ran faster than the previous NCAA record as well. So she clearly had some momentum coming into this race and just showed it off. Her first season now this summer as a professional runner. She now has her first U.S. title, making Team USA. Angelina Napoleon in 2nd for the women's steeplechase. After only her 2nd year in the NCAA, she's young and made her first team in the senior championships. Not a stranger, though, after a 10th place finish at the 2024 World Under-20 Championships. And so now as a 20-year-old, she can't compete in the Under-20 Championships anymore. Now she's going to be competing in the senior championships, which is cool. Kaylee Mitchell then rounded out the team for USA, finishing 3rd, likewise making her first team after a number of top 10 finishes in recent years. So U.S. women's steeple has been in a bit of a dearth lately, which is kind of just mirroring the world because you have essentially the 4 outstanding performers in the steeplechase who, if you can't run under 850, you're just not even in the conversation anymore, which is crazy. So like those days where Americans were winning medals in 9:0 something or 9:10, something like that. Now we've got a whole slew of Americans running that time, and they're not even top 10 in the world. It's just crazy. So we'll see. We'll see how things go. But we've got some great steeplechasers, some young talent coming up. Now, let's talk about the 800 meters. Women's 800 was once again the youngsters show tonight. It was really quite incredible because you've got like the major veterans who are kind of on their way out. You've got the middle veterans who are kind of in the peak form of things, and then you've got like these new stars, and the new stars just rocked the day. Slow race, which favors the fast finishers, and Roisin Willis is one of those fast finishers. Willis, recently NCAA champion out of Stanford. She's actually got multiple titles, in fact, to her name. She now is pro. She has signed a deal. And then Maggie Congdon, also recent NCAA runner who is now running professionally, finished second, both making U.S. team. And Sage Herta-Klecker, finally. I don't know how long she has been in the conversation as a top-tier performer and not made the team. But here we go. Sage Herta-Klecker has now finished on the podium, making her first outdoor team. That's exciting. By the way, barely edging out U.S. champion Nia Akins, who is in fourth. How about the men's 800? If the other things I've said so far were not exciting, this one is. This one is. And so the other ones were too, which means this is even more exciting. This might be the race of the meet, by the way. I would say this is the race of the meet of U.S. Championships 2025. We've got legends like Donovan Brazier, who's back, making his resurgence. You got Bryce Hoppel, who owns the American record and is always a top 5 finisher globally. And then we've got the new fires, Josh Hoey, who's just on a storm. We've got Cooper Lutkenhouse, the young teenager who's just eating up the high school records. And then we have staples like Brandon Miller and Isaiah Harris. Like, this field is so incredible. What a final. Well, if you wanted to make the U.S. team for World Championships this year, if you wanted to finish on the podium, you had to run a top 5 U.S. all-time performance. That's right. If you wanted to even finish in the top 3 in this one race, you had to run better than the previous 3rd fastest U.S. performance ever. I'm not joking. How is that even possible? They just reset the entire record book for U.S. half marathon or half mile, and it's not even the people you would have thought. It's not even the people. Who do you think won this race? Bryce Hoppel? Great guess. No. Josh Hoey, because he's been winning more of them lately. Great guess. No. It was Donovan Brazier. Donovan Brazier is back in furious fashion in a personal best time. This is like the season for the ages. I hope Donovan Brazier wins a gold medal in the World Championships, because it will just be like the greatest comeback story we have ever seen in American distance running. World champion in 2019, multiple surgeries, foot, ankle, all this stuff, just like down and out. There was talk that Donovan Brazier didn't even like running anymore. He wanted to be done, wanted to be out of this thing. And then here he is, U.S. number 3 all-time performance, 1:42.16, a new personal best time, U.S. title in what is clearly the best U.S. half-mile field that's ever been assembled. These talents are incredible, and Donovan Brazier just beat them all. But that's not even the end of the story, because who is storming through the finish line in second, right behind Brazier, with the shocked expression on his face, like, how is this even possible? You can see it all over his face as he's finishing. 16-year-old Cooper Lutkenhouse. 16 years old, and he just bested the best American field ever assembled in the distance, -1. Brazier ahead of him. That's right. So U.S. high schooler Lutkenhouse just ran a 3-second personal best in the 800 for a new under 18 world record and under 20 number 2 all time. And he's only 16 years old. Everyone's like, there's no way this is legitimate. Like, what's he on? Like, how is this possible, right? And that is a big question to be asking. Because prior to this race, when he ran 1:45, everyone was like, this kid is the greatest talent that we've ever seen in U.S. 800-meter running. And what's he going to be capable of, as he goes on, as he ages, right? And now everyone's like, what? What's he capable of right now? At 16 years old, he ran 1:42.27. 1:42.27 at 16 years of age. I cannot imagine the shock that he must be in right now. Like, he's got to be just staring at that medal and staring at that clock picture and just saying, how did that just happen? What's going on? Back in third place, by the way, was the most reliable name in U.S. mid-D, Bryce Hoppel, running 142.49. Not a personal best for him because he holds the American record, but still one of his better performances all time, which is just incredible. It took that just to finish third place. U.S. number 3 performance before this race was 142.60. The legendary Johnny Gray. All 3 of these guys ran faster than the legendary Johnny Gray. How did that happen? 6 of 9 finishers in the race ran personal best times. And it was probably Josh Hoey who made it the fast race because he took it out. But even then, it was just destined to be a crazy moment. And here we have it. Okay, let's wrap it up with the 5,000 meters. Starting with the men, no denying that Grant Fisher and Nico Young are the cream of the crop in global distance running. And they showed it yet again here. But what happens when an Olympic gold medalist gets shafted in his primary event? What does Cole Hocker do when he comes back in the 5,000 the next day? He gets revenge. And that's exactly what he did. Just like Jakob Ingebrigtsen in the World Championships got revenge coming back to steal the 5,000 meter title from the legendary Nico Young, who holds the record in the U.S., and Grant Fisher, who holds the world indoor record. Why not? Why not, Hocker? Just come out and beat them to take your own title. So I can't help but wonder, would that have actually been Fisher's victory if Nico Young had held the rail, the inside line, in the last 100 meters? Because Cole Hocker did the one thing that is reliable in this situation, which is just stay on the inside because it's going to open up. The path will clear. And sure enough, Nico Young, who was in first, coming off of the final bend, he was on the inside track, the inside line of the track, and he drifted out, which they always say. We keep saying it on the podcast, don't drift out in the finish, but he did. And Hocker passed him on the inside. And then Fisher passed him on the outside, and then Nico Young ended up third still. So Fisher second, Young third, Hocker for the win. All 3 are going to be doubling, although in different events. And just really have to say a lot of U.S. talent staying home in the 5,000 meter, just like the 1,500 and the 800. Like, these events are so competitive. Last, but certainly not at all least, but very exciting race was the women's 5,000 meter, and some real controversy in this one because the race was taken by none other than the embattled Shelby Houlihan, back for her first outdoor championships after her 4-year doping violation suspension. Shelby Houlihan, her supporters see it as a vindication, and her deniers see it as proof of the thing all along. Maybe we should be more concerned still. Oh, goodness. The Shelby Houlihan story is so interesting to me, and I'm just really fascinated by how people react to it. But she did. She finished top of the group with a storming final kick. Shelby Houlihan took the race to win her first U.S. title since her ban. And, she looked strong in the indoor season, and she's still looking strong now. But let's face it, the women's 5,000 meters is not an event for an American medal this year with what the current talent is doing at the top tier. The Faith Kipyegons, Beatrice Chebets, and Gudaf Sigays, who are all running 14 minutes or under, not to mention Agnes Negedic and others. And so I don't see a medal coming, but I do think that this is quite the field. So here we had then Houlihan over Elise Cranny, who doubled up to make her second team in second place in both, and Josette Andrews to finish third over Wayne Kaladi Frezigi, who once again ends up fourth. That's a tough place to be 2 times in a row. So Kaladi's staying home, at least this year. Well, that's all we've got time for. We're headed to the mountains as a family now, so we'll see you again in a couple weeks with more rules for realizing your dreams and more incredible track action on the way to the World Championships next month. I'm Zach. Thank you for tuning in to AtoZrunning. We'll talk to you next time.